Today we are going to discuss corporate communication, its definition, scope, and functions. First of all, we have to keep it in mind that why the communication is important for any business organizations. Before that, we already know that as we are living in a society, and communication is always important for any society. In fact, we can say that communication is the basic fabric of the society. We can't imagine a society without a communication. When we communicate, then only we are able to form a society. We have seen that when we are very new to each other, and when we don't conversate with each other, we're not able to establish, we are not able to develop relationships, we are not able to develop uh, our intimacy with that person. So communication is always important, and communication is important for any business organizations also. So why communication plays a major role in the development of any business organization? There are many areas where communication plays really a major role. It is through effective communication that customers learn about a company's product and services. When you are producing something, when you are producing a product, or you are providing a service, so it's your responsibility as a business organization, as a company, that you should inform about your product and services to the general public, to the society. And this is where communication plays an important role. And through effective communication, your customers learn about your product and services. Now, effective communication shows what makes brand unique compared to their competitors. Uh, if you are running a company, if you are running an organization, so your brand value plays a very important role in that thing. Your brand reputation, your brand image, your brand value, all these things plays a very vital role in the growth and in the growth of your company. So this is where communication also plays an important role, and through effective communication only you can establish your brand, and you can enhance its brand value to your customer and in the society. And now communication doesn't require only for external communication, it is required for internal communication also. What is internal communication? Communication within the organization. So it's how management and employees coordinate their activities to ensure that entire organization is marching towards the same strategic goal. Uh, it it all depends how you coordinate. Unless until the coordination is really going to be very smooth and very operative. So your the coordination between the employees, between the different between at management level. So for that purpose also, it is very much the communication is very much required. So this is how management and employees coordinate their activities to ensure that the entire organization is marching towards the same strategic goal. Now, it is also how executives inform investors, the media, and the general public about important organizational development. Communication always plays an important role when it comes to about the different activities, inform about the different developments of the company to it's a different stakeholder. It might be your executive, it might be your employees, or it might be your investors, it might be the media, it might be the general public. So at each and every level, if you want to inform about the developments and about the activities of the society, so here also communication, you need communication. So it is very much clear that communication is very much important. Effective communication is very much important for improving businesses and organizations. And this is the place communication is so important that most organizations will eventually reach a point at which they realize that they need to invest in building a corporate communication team responsible for these various activities. So when you feel that your the communication is that much important in for your organization, at that point organizations reaches at a point that the feel that now they really need a separate department, a separate entity for their effective communication purpose. And this is how the corporate communication department evolved. And now corporate communication has all been established as a separate branch for any corporate. So as name suggests that it is corporate communication. So what is corporate? If we keep it very simple, so corporate is basically the large business organizations which have legal entity, which have a legal entity. In fact, we can say that it is with unattached responsibilities. So corporates are maybe treated as a separate legal entity. It means its interests, its goals might be different from its employees, for its owners, for its stakeholders, from its stakeholders. So for for this purpose, corporate and when the corporate communicate, so this makes it as a corporate communication department. And now, what is communication? Communication, as we know very much, we all know that communication is very basically, if to be keep it very simple, that communication is also sending information. If I have to be keep it very simple, to be keep it very short, if I would like to tell you what the communication is basically, so communication is sending the information to the other people. It means that whatever I want to say, if I have a feeling, if I have a thought, if I have an idea, means whatever I have to say, whatever I have in my mind, whatever I have in my heart. So if I want to communicate it, if I want to send it to the other person, so that process is called communication. Like if I want to say you that please come here, so the first of all, the idea should be generated in my mind, what I want to say, and when the idea has come, now it should be converted into the words or languages. So when we convert into words or language, then we communicate it to the other person, that is known as the receiver. So when a sender sends information to the receiver, and when receiver receives that information and to understand totally that information, and then he also responded, means when he gives feedback, that the whole communication, then the communication process got completed. So corporate communication is basically what the corporate communication is. The corporate communication is refers to the way in which businesses and organizations communicate with internal and external various audiences. Now I repeat, corporate communication refers to the way in which businesses and organizations communicate with internal and external audiences. Now, these audiences may include customers and potential customers. These audiences may include employees. These audiences may include key stakeholders, or it might be the media and the general public. It might be the government agencies and other third-party regulators. So basically, we can divide the audiences into two separate categories. The first is internal and the second is external. So who are the external? What is the external internal communication? Internal communication is communicating within the organizations. When you communicate with your employees, when you communicate with different departments, that communication is called the internal communication. So if so, like when you are communicating with your employees, this is your internal communication. But when you communicate outside the organization, like your customers or potential customers, so that is called that is called external communication. So corporate communication might be divided into internal communication and external communication. And these audiences may include your customers, potential customers, employees, key stakeholders, media, general public, government agencies, or other third-party regulators. So all you need that being a corporate communication executive, you have to be communicate internally or externally. And your audiences might be your own employees, your audiences might be the media, it might be your general public. So more or less, a corporate communication department uh, uh, work as a bigger umbrella that engulfs different activities of different departments. So corporate communication can take many forms depending on the audiences that is being addressed. It all depends to whom we are communicating. For that purpose, corporate communication takes different forms. And ultimately, an organization's communication strategy will typically consist of both verbal and non-verbal activities. And how the corporate communication department communicate basically, they communicate verbally or non-verbally. Now, what is verbal communication or what is non-verbal communication? We have already studied in the when we were studying the communication, that verbal communication is related to words, and non-verbal communication when we don't use words as a medium of our communication. That might be like our gestures, our body postures. All these comes under the category of non-verbal communication. While when we use words, that comes under the category of verbal communication. And even we can divide verbal communication into two parts. The first is written communication, and the second is spoken communication. So, being a corporate communication executive, you have to deal with verbal. You have to be expert of verbal communication and non-verbal communication. And when we talk about the verbal communication, it might be a written. It might be your written skills or your spoken skills. Now the questions comes: what are the forms? What are the different forms in which we communicate? And like when you are working in a corporate communication department, so what should you prepare? What will be your tools through which you are going to communicate? So you might communicate, or you might prepare when we talk about the written form. So you might prepare internal and external reports. Being a corporate communication executive, you have to prepare your internal and external reports. And sometimes you might have to prepare advertisements also. This also comes into the category of written communication. So as we already discussed, that corporate communication is it works like a bigger umbrella that engrosses different activities of different departments. So sometimes there might be possibility that sometimes you are assigned to prepare some advertisements also. And then sometimes it's website copy, like we are totally living in a digital era. So website copies are very much important nowadays. So you might be told to prepare your website copy. And then some promotional materials may include different things like brochures, like pamphlets, or like boardings, hoardings. So all these comes in. So these are the things that you have to you should be. You might be able to. You might prepare all these things when you will work as a corporate communication executive. And then you have to write email, or then you might have to prepare press releases. So all these things are required when you will work as a corporate communication executive. Now all these needs a different skill. Like when you are preparing report, you have to be expert in preparing report. You should be able to use different softwares. If it is there are some data or other things, then you should know how to work in MS Excel effectively, because you will need all those things in your report. or like if you are preparing press releases, so you must have a good knowledge of media activities, how the press functions, and how they need their releases, and how you should interact with media. So all these things require special skills. Like when you are when we talk about the emails, so it looks that emails are the thing of gone days, but this is not the fact. Emails are still a very effective way to communicate even today. Like you must have noticed that you receive so many business emails on your email IDs. Once you inquire any company, once you inquire about anything, and they once you register at some sites, so you must have been noticed that they start sending emails to your email ID. So emails are still the one of the very best way to communicate. And even emails can be categorized into internal emails and outer and external emails. So the idea is same, that when you communicate with your employees through an email, those emails are called internal emails, and when you communicate externally outside the organization, those emails are called external emails. So if you work in a corporate communication department, so all these things you might prepare when you will start working there. So these are the internal and external reports, advertisements, website copies, promotional materials, emails, press releases. So all these things you might prepare. Now, when we come to the spoken form, so on a corporate communication executive, not only he should not only be skilled in written form, he should also be skilled in spoken forms. Like you have to arrange meetings. So arranging the meetings is very important for corporate communication department. Then arranging press conferences. Well, it is the press. Most of the time when you when you arrange the press conferences, in those press conference you have to provide press releases to the media person. So all these are interconnected. Sometimes you have to arrange interviews, or sometimes you have to prepare video. So spoken skill uh, this in that is also required in this field. So now these were the verbal communication. Now when we talk about the non-spoken communication, that means non-verbal communication. So the photographs might come into this. Photography is there. Then illustration is also an important tool of communication. You illustrate different things. Infographics are very popular these days. And then general branding. So all these come into the category of non-spoken communication. So corporate communication is to precise it, corporate communication is basically refers to the way in which businesses and organizations communicate with internal and external various audiences. And these audiences may include your employees, your customers, your stakeholders, media, general people, all those things. And the way they communicate, that might be divided into again internally or externally. And the way is the verbal or non-verbal, and verbal might be also divided into written form and spoken form. So written forms we have discussed, and spoken forms are discussed, and sometimes you also need non-spoken communication. So all these covers the corporate communication. Now, when we come to the functions of corporate communication department, how they functions. So it's good if we should keep in mind that basically corporate communication department functions in a big corporate scenario. If you are working in a smaller companies, usually you won't find the corporate communication department there, and they most of the time they function as a PR department. PR department is also more or less is also quite similar to corporate communication, but PR departments It means the public relations department have fewer responsibilities in comparison to corporate communication department. So in most organizations, the communication department is responsible for overseeing a wide range of communication activities. And one of the simplest ways of understanding these different activities is to group them according to the role they play within our organization. So what the role they are going to play, what the role corporate communication department is going to play, it decides how they are going to function. So we may divide its different functions, its different activities into different categories. So first of all, it comes media and public relations. So media is the very handling the media is very basic of corporate communication department. It's like uh, uh, this what is this media and public relations? So this refers to the way in which a company or organizations communicate with the general public, including the media. Well, the way a company or organizations communicate with general public or with media, that comes into the category of media and public relations. So what you have to do when you are going to coordinate with media means you are going to organizing news conferences, product launches, and interviews, and creating materials like banners, flyers for such events. And this is this is the basically the very basic of very basic of media of corporate communication, because when when we talk about the corporate communication department, so media managing media comes very naturally to it. As we just discussed that corporate communication is a bigger entity in comparison to PR department. So what the major role of PR department is managing media and handling public. So when you are functioning as a corporate, or when you are functioning as a business organization, it is required that most of the time it is required that you should be come to the public, and media is one of the finest part of that. So you want to reach to the public, and that can only be possible through media, and media have uh, different categories nowadays. So you might have to prepare different content for print media and for electronic media and for social media. uh, so nowadays social media is also become important, and corporate communication department most of the time they have a separate team for handling the social media. So handling media is very much important for any corporate communication department. And now the second functions they play is the customer communication and marketing. Well, though most businesses still differentiate between the marketing and communication department, the lines between the two have begun to blur in recent years. Now, basically, sometimes a few years back, we keep both this department at bay, like media department, communication department and marketing department. They work separately. Now they still work separately, but the lining has started blurring these days. It has been seen that corporate communication department has to play its role in marketing strategy also. So as the lines between the two have begun to blur in recent years, corporate communication strategy often impacts marketing strategy also, and vice versa, which have increased cooperation and collaboration between the two functions. So it all depends how you function. So when we talk about the customer communication and marketing, what you have to do, you have to create marketing emails, browsers, flyers, newsletters, website copies, social media strategies. Social media, as we were just discussing, that they have become so much important these days that you most of the time you have a different team for handling social media issues. And when we talk about social media, It also comes while handling the media, and it also plays a very important role in marketing these days. Social media has different platforms like Facebook or like Facebook, Twitter, yeah, Instagram, and where lots of people are connected to each other, and they can share their information. And we have seen that half of the world, more than half of the world is now using the social media. So all these plays very important role, and customer communication and marketing department also comes into the category of is also the part of the corporate communication department. And now the third functions that a corporate communication department plays, that is crisis communication. What is crisis communication? Crisis communication is a very important part of corporate communication, and crisis communication refers to the specific messaging that a company portrays in the face of a crisis or unanticipated event which has the potential to damage their reputation or existence. And in the event of such a crisis, it is the responsibility of the communication department to create a strategy to address it. Like whenever it is the time of crisis, that crisis may be due to some accident in the business organization, and that may have see some casualty or any sort of crisis, when you have to when you are responsible, when you have to give some reply, or when you have to give some explanation to the media and the public. So the any crisis might be of different time, and your strategy should also be according to that crisis that occurs. But most of the time, it is the responsibility of corporate communication department to work in that crisis in that crisis scenario. And the crisis communication is it really plays an important part in of corporate communication. So you might have to organize interviews and news briefings for company representative to discuss the issue at hand. In the at the time of crisis communication, you might be communicating. The corporate communication department might be communicating internally. That the communication might be of internal communication sort, like when you are dealing with your employees, you are convincing them about that incident. And it also include that advising companies representative on what to say and how to say, and when speaking with members of the media. Like some accidents have occurred already, and now this is the responsibility of corporate communication department, that you have to train them how to treat with media, how to deal with media, what they are going to say in front of the media. And sometimes the corporate communication department executive have to train their seniors also. Like most of the time, this is the responsibility of the CEO or MD or board of or the members of the or the board of the department. So this is the responsibility of the senior authority to explain to the media, and most of the time they don't know how to deal with media, what to say in the media. So as the corporate communication people knows how media functions, so they might prepare their seniors to dealing with media, and how and what they should say with media people. So it is that they might advise the company representative on what to say and how to say in speaking with with members of the media. And the second thing is that the crisis communication might be with some attorneys, government regulations, emergency respondents, and politicians as necessary. So they might have to interact with different people. Like sometimes they might have to interact with government regulators or emergency responders, politicians, police. So most of the time it comes to the corporate communication department. And now the fourth function that corporate communication departments the way function, that is internal communication. As we already discussed, that internal communication is also an important part of corporate communication department. And what is internal communication? Communication within the organization. So in addition to being responsible for communicating the organization's message with external audience, most communication teams will play an important role in internal communication, and that includes drafting emails and memos, announcing company's news and initiative to its employees. It includes complying employees' resources, such as informations about the employees' benefit. This is the responsibility of the corporate communication department. And like creating printed materials such as employees' handbooks or flyovers or flyers, and facilitating group brainstorming sessions and training session amongst employees. Corporate communication department also arranges some group brainstorming exercise sessions and training sessions for its employees, so that they feel optimistic and they feel energetic, enthusiastic, and they can contribute more in the development of the company. And they might have be responsible managing internal blogs, newsletter, or other publication. And it has been seen that internal communication is often done at the direction of an or direction or in partnership with the human resource department team. So most of the time, it has been seen that when corporate communication department communicate with employees, so HR department plays they also plays role, and they give some directions to the corporate communication department. So you have seen that at different times, the corporate communication department plays their role differently. Sometimes they work like a marketing team, sometimes they'll work like a HR team, but all these comes into the functions of the corporate communication department. So today we studied the definitions, scope, and functions of corporate communication.